Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for day one of the F the Fairy Tale live challenge. This is the F the Fairy Tale challenge talking about my new book, F the Fairy Tale. We'll talk about that in a little bit and all the insights that are inside here. So we are simulcasting right now on multiple platforms. So I am talking to you here on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and I'm also talking to folks here on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad you're here for our F the Fairy Tale challenge. I want to help you get unstuck in love. Little intro on who I am. I know some of you may have gotten the link sent to them and may have no idea who I am. So for those who know, this will be a little review. For those who don't, I have been a certified dating coach for 17 years now. I originally started out as a dating profile writer, and then I got certified and trained to help people through the entire dating and relationship process. Some of you I know may have seen my work on NBC's Access Daily, where I have a recurring segment. I also have a recurring segment on The Drew Barrymore Show. I've had a column in the LA Times. I've written for the Washington Post Date Lab for 4 years. I love, and I know love, and I've been living in this space for a long time. But you know what? I see that there are a lot of things that have changed about dating today, and that there's just so many additional challenges that you all are navigating through. And when I started as a dating coach, there really wasn't such a thing as dating apps. There was online dating, which is how I met my husband, and I'm a big fan of online dating. And I had to evolve, and as I started working with clients and going through their experiences, I have been deeply involved with dating apps and understanding the trends and the data and the pitfalls that a lot of people have been falling into. And I work with OkCupid as their official dating coach. I've actually worked with all of the major dating apps. I've worked with Bumble, I've worked with Match.com, I've worked with, you're not supposed to say .com anymore. I work with Match, and I've worked with Tinder. I've pretty much, I know my stuff in the dating app space, and I know how frustrating and how difficult it is for you. So I really want to help you navigate through your challenges on dating apps, but also offline. There's all kinds of additional shifts in the way that we communicate and the way that we relate to people that we're not even, that most people aren't even talking about. We didn't have texting. Our brains didn't evolve learning how to text. Our brains didn't evolve learning how to communicate without body language. So we are doing all of that today, but we are going to start with my new book, F the Fairy Tale. It's going to be published in January, but I wanted to give you guys a head start on the principles that are here in this book. I have been working so hard on this over the last 2 years because I think this is a crucial time for people to understand how to navigate through dating and relationships, because it's not the same. It's not the same as what our parents went through. It's not the same as even maybe our last relationship. So I want to help everybody navigate through this. I just want to shout out a couple people. I see some familiar faces here in the chat. Hello, Jean. Hi, Carol. Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for being here. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to challenge you with a few of the tips that I have here in the book. And I know it's easy to sit on the sidelines. It's easy to complain about dating. It's a lot harder to do something. You've already done something by showing up to this live stream. Thank you for the hearts. You've already done something by putting yourself in the right space to find love. So today I'm going to meet you halfway here, and I'm going to give you this challenge and show you how having a structure around dating, having the knowledge, the experience that my 17 years of coaching singles has brought me, that can enable you to shortcut a lot of this process. Because I know you've been through it. You've probably been doing a lot of the things, and sometimes it's just a little tweak. Sometimes it's just a little push to get you unstuck, and that's what we're going to do today. So if you challenge yourself to take action, we don't just learn from hearing it, we gotta actually do it. And if you take action today, you will see quickly how this can work for you. So today I'm going to give you the dating myth of the day. In the book, I talk about the 4 dating myths and the 4 pillars of long-term compatibility. So we're going to focus on a myth each day of this 4-day challenge, and I will tell you how to myth bust that myth and how you can get unstuck and you can do a challenge, actually challenge yourself to get into action, as I was saying earlier, and that will give you the power to rewrite your dating adventure, your dating story. So thank you for everybody who's joining now. We are simulcasting on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and also on Instagram. So I appreciate you being here, and things are gonna start moving fast and furious. So you might want to have a pen and paper handy. You definitely will need to type in the chat. And in fact, why don't we just get the chat going by telling me like where you're from, what brought you here today, so I can shout you out and acknowledge you for showing up if you so choose to participate, but there will be participation. Okay, so after I talk about the dating myth of the day, we're going to do a challenge of the day, and we're going to do this together interactively, as I was saying, as all my programs are interactive. We learn by getting into action. And then I'm going to open it up for Q&A at the end. And I'll also tell you, if you like what we're doing here, I'll tell you how you can continue this journey with me and how we can really work together to get you from where you are to where you want to be in love. So thank you for joining me. Pamela from Northern California, Californian here right now. Another Northern Californian, Lila from the Bay Area, just deleted the app, exhausted. Oh, I'm going to be talking about that. Renee in Pennsylvania, thank you for being here. Okay, I'm glad, Lila, that you said you need a refresh mindset, because that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. Because there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of stories that we tell ourselves about love, but I've identified the 4 major dating myths that I see coming up for my clients and for my Dates and Mates podcast listeners again and again. And these myths actually all line up with 4 different phases of the dating process. So remember, I said I began with writing dating profiles, but then I realized I really needed to train to coach people throughout the entire dating process. And it always begins with mindset, as you were just saying, Lila. Mindset is that first phase. And then we move into preparation. How do you prepare for the dates? How do you show up as your best self? And then we get into the date itself, which I know causes a lot of anxiety for people today. And then finally, the future. So that's how we're going to break down these 4 days of the dating challenge. And I'm going to tell you the most prevalent myth that goes with each of those phases. Just want to shout out a couple more people. Another NorCal person, Jewel and Chantel from Atlanta, ready to retry the apps. Okay, we'll get there. That's going to be more like day 3. But today, I want to tell you the list, the myth that gets most people stuck in that mindset phase. I call it the list myth. And the list myth shows up when you are thinking about the qualities that you want. You're kind of imagining who this idealized version of your person is. And a lot of times it also comes up when we're kind of afraid of taking action, when we withdraw even from the dating process because things don't line up with our expectations. So if you've ever said one of these phrases, I'm going to read a couple phrases to you. If it sounds familiar to you, maybe give me a little bit of hearts or maybe note it in the chat right now. If you've ever said, I'm just really picky and that's why I never meet anyone, you may be dealing with a list myth. If you've ever said, there's no one online that I'm interested in, there's no one here that I'm interested in, that's the list myth. If you've ever said, everyone that I've dated seemed great on paper, I hear that one a lot. Seemed great on paper, but there's always a big but. One of my friends calls it the big but syndrome. Has nothing to do with that but everything to do with the but. So that comes up a lot with the list myth. If you've ever said, don't even message me if, that's the list myth. And fun fact about the don't even message me if, from my work at OkCupid, I can see statistically what's happening behind the scenes. I can see whose profiles are being interacted with. I can see, general trends. I can see which keywords are coming up and which actions are moving people into connecting and chatting and moving offline. And I can see from the OkCupid data that if you say phrases like, don't even message me if, you actually get far fewer messages than people that don't say that. So when we start restricting our pool in our dating profile, and we'll talk more about dating profiles in day 3 of the challenge, if you start restricting yourself before you've even begun, it actually ends up putting up a wall that's turning off the people that you want as well as the people that you don't. Okay? All right. Oh, I see Adventures in Attunement. Thank you for joining. And Jean, this sounds familiar to you? Yeah, can I get an amen? If you said one of those phrases, then you're probably dealing with the list myth. And I just want to reframe the list myth for you today. And I talk about this in the book. The inverse of the list myth is beginning with shared goals for the future. So some of you have heard me talk about the 4 pillars of long-term compatibility. A lot of times when someone is dealing with the list myth, then I realize that they actually haven't gotten clarity on what they're looking for. They're sort of beginning their process before they even know what they really want. And it's like this, I can almost hear the family history or the societal expectations or see the rom-coms playing out. And, we all are influenced by our environment and by the things we read, the things we watch, the things we see. But when it actually is playing out in real time, that's when we have to ask ourselves, does this make sense for me? Does this really fit what I want? So, and this is something that I do a lot in the Dates and Mates method in my live program, which I'll tell you a little bit more about at the end. But what we do at the beginning is we got to get clear on that mindset first. And even like the relationship goal, why? Why do you even want a relationship? I'm pausing there. This is a anticipatory pause, because if you really think about that, why do you want a relationship? Is there something in here that you really feel like will be served by a relationship, or are you filling something? Are you doing this because somebody told you that's what you're supposed to have? And, I've been married now for 16 years. I believe that the person that we partner with is the most important decision you will ever make in your life. And that was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. But I really took the time to get clear about the kind of partner I wanted, the goals for my future together with this partner, and how we were building a life together. And this mindset work is really important. That's why we spend the first 2 weeks of the Dates and Mates method really getting clear on a lot of mindset stuff. I actually want to tell you a little story from one of the people who was in my program before. My client, Sue, I don't know if she's on today, but I just got an email from Sue yesterday, y'all. No joke. I got an email from Sue, who did my program back in January, so just a few months ago. And she said, Damona, my initial mindset began with negative self-talk, including, you're too old, you're not worthy, there's no one in your town for you. These are the thoughts that we're repeating and repeating and repeating to her. And through the exercises in our program, she really began to shift that thinking. And she got to a place of visualizing what she actually wanted and really hooking into what was that relationship goal that she had. And she showed up to dates with more curiosity. She opened her mind to the possibility that these thoughts she had possibly weren't true. They possibly weren't even hers. Where did they come from? Right? So I'm going to read the end of the email that she sent me. She said, recently I met a fantastic man, and oh, how wonderful he is. I closed the dating app and we're both committed to a relationship together. I feel confident that we can talk with each other about anything and everything in the days, weeks, and months going forward. Thank you for helping me towards health and finding new love. I'm so very grateful. And you guys, this is why I do the work that I do. Because when I get an email like that, and I know that these exercises that I give you, the challenges that I give you, the program that I do, it has the power to literally change your whole life. And as I said a moment ago, who you choose to partner with, it affects everything else in your life. It affects your finances, your family, your health, as you just heard from Sue. So I read you this because I know that if it's possible for Sue, it's possible for you too. And I saw even in the chat, Lila said it's relatable. I know many of you have similar stories, similar thoughts about where you are right now in dating. And this has just been a few months that her life is completely transformed. So now we are going to move into the challenge part. I just want to shout out Lizette. Thank you for the hearts. This is what my daughter taught me how to do the new one. It's this. Oh, there we go. It's so hard for my fingers to do that. Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Congrats to Sue. And also thank you to Edgelina for listening to the podcast. And you just met an amazing guy after years of online dating. Look at that. We're changing lives on the podcast. We're changing lives here on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And we're changing lives in the Dates and Mates method. So are you guys ready for a challenge? Let's get into action. Let's do some things. Let's shake it up. So every challenge that I'm going to give you in this 4-day challenge, it's going to come in 2 parts. Because remember I said we got to get into action. But we can't just get out here and start doing whatever. You know, this is why like a lot of people are like, I'm on the apps, but it's not working. It's because it requires clarity first. So we begin with clarity and then we get into action. So here's your clarity piece. And remember I said it was going to be interactive. So I'm expecting to see some things in the chat. First, I want you to tell me what you think your limiting belief about love is. What is that mantra that you've been repeating to yourself? So for Sue, it was, I'm too old. There's no one in my town. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe you could put words in the chat and tell me what you think, what you hear actually, repeating about love. So I'm going to give you a second. Go ahead and don't be shy. Like, I'm here to help. So the more honest you are with me, the more honest you are, with the group. I'm all about building communities too. Look, somebody else, like I read that comment about Sue and people were like, that's relatable. So there's no shame here. We don't do shame. we just don't do it in the Dates and Mates method. But we do honesty and authenticity, and we do transformation. So maybe you've said, I'm seeing in the chat, I'm too old. There's no one in my town, like Sue said. It hasn't worked out by now. Why should it work out in the future? I am too big. I'm too old, and I live in the wrong place. I'm fighting for my freedom. Why would I give that up now? It's slim pickings for women over the age of 45. By the way, just addendum, Sue is 70. And I've even heard other matchmakers tell me that it's harder for women over a certain age. And I just think that's a story that we're repeating. And maybe that's true in your practice, but if that's true, why do so many women like Sue, of all ages, of 70, of 60, of 50, of 40, of 30, why have I had so much success with people? Because what we do in this program is we look at that belief, we look at whether it's from us or from society or from someone else, we look at that belief and we say, well, what if? What if that belief was not true? So I see, I wasn't able to read all of the comments in the chat here, but for everyone that commented and for everyone that didn't, and that's sitting with that repeating belief, I want you to just imagine for a moment that it's not true. And then I want you to visualize what that relationship goal is that I touched on earlier. I want you to think about what it will look like and what it will feel like. And what are you building in your life that you want to invite somebody else into, to share with you, right? Put in the chat some of your relationship goals. Put in the chat some of your dreams, some of the things that you are building now. Because we can stay with that limiting belief. And I know it's playing again and again and again in your mind. And I'm not calling you crazy by doing this, but I'm just saying, like, I know how these thoughts loop and loop and loop. But what if we focused instead on what are we heading towards? What is the ultimate goal here? Go ahead and put it in the chat there. Someone who has my back and vice versa and is a good communicator. Thank you. Is a good communicator. That's so clear. And by the way, no listy things. we're not going to say has to make this much money or has to be this tall or has to live in my backyard. That would be creepy. But, a lot of times people are like, has to be, I work a lot in New York, on the TV shows that I do. And people in New York are notorious. New Yorkers are notorious for, like, I cannot cross a bridge or a tunnel to get there. What if it's your person, but they're right across the bridge? I could see them. Chantel says we make each other better. I see also who is all in with us. Someone who is all in with us. I would love to know, is that us like a family? Some of you have children. Some of you have animals. Some of you are plant parents. Like, what is that us? Facilitating a feeling of safety. Thank you so much for saying that. I've been talking about this a little bit on Dates and Mates, but I'm all about the feeling of safety. That has to be number one. And that is why I give so many safety tips, even though I'm a huge fan of dating apps. I give safety tips for online dating. And then I also talk about these more emotional elements of choosing a partner, because the safety has to come first. So thank you so much for mentioning that. I would love to read through all of them. I'm going to read through them all later, but you guys are right on. You're right on in visualizing the way that you need to move away from the list myth and into something that is more grounded in the goals for the life that you are building, right? So now we're going to get into part 2, which is the action part. Now we get to do stuff. So today and every day, I'm going to give you an action step here. The thought work's really important. What we were just doing, very important. But I just believe that you don't actually see the change until you actually implement the changes in your life, until you're faced with real world decisions or real world experiences where you can see yourself changing and where you have an opportunity to choose differently. So the first thing I want you to do today is to adopt an attitude of yes. That's your first challenge. Adopt an attitude of yes. I talk about this in the Dates and Mates Method program. I also talk about it in the book. When I say adopt an attitude of yes, I mean, how can you open up to things that you were previously closed to? Because you are not the same person that you were 5 years ago. You're not the same person that you were when you began this live stream, right? So I want you to think about being open to new experiences. And you just have to trust me that when we do some of this mindset work and when we are aligning things differently and going about finding love differently or showing up for love differently, that you get different outcomes. But we have to get into the action to actually be able to see how our mindset has shifted. Does that make sense? It takes you back to improv. Totally. This is kind of improv. So yes, and I talk about this in the Dates and Mates Method too. But I just want you to adopt an attitude of yes and find 2 things that you can say yes to this week that you may have otherwise said no to. So someone in my program who is in our VIP Facebook page said that they said yes to going to a party because they didn't know anyone there, and normally they wouldn't have gone, and it was very much out of their comfort zone, but They did it. They did it. They got over that hurdle. And the more that you clear these kind of hurdles that may be blocking you, the more you can show up fully and authentically, and people can see all of who you are and what you bring to the table. So find 2 things that you would otherwise say no to, but you're going to say yes to them this week because you're doing the challenge. And I'll actually tell you one more story. There's a guy that I talked to at a party over the weekend, and he was saying it was very much out of his comfort zone. He's an introvert, as my husband is too. He's an introvert, hard for him to say yes to get to the party. So he said he created a mantra for himself just to get himself unstuck. And he told himself, I like people and people like me, which he admitted was not necessarily the case for him all the time before. That wasn't always how he thought. But that was what got him out of the house and got him to actually show up. So for you, you might need a mantra. You might need an accountability buddy. You might need to make a promise to somebody. In fact, you might need to make a promise to me right now. If you know what you're going to do differently, maybe just name one thing. Or maybe you just promise me that you will think about it. Think about when we get off of this live stream in a couple minutes, and I am going to open it up for Q&A in just a sec. But when you leave here, what is one thing that you want to commit to doing differently? Maybe, yes, as Jen, as he said, maybe I like people and people like me. Go ahead and put in the chat if there's something that you're going to promise. Pilar, hello, hi. Okay, put in the chat. I'm going to move on, but go ahead and put in the chat. We'll come back to it because I want to open this up for questions. But it's really important that we don't get stuck wishing and wanting things to be different. You got to get into action. You got to get clear on what you want, and then you got to do something about it so you can see the learning. And by the way, if you need a little support in that accountability and like you need somebody to make a promise to, you can make a promise to me and to my team, because we are starting a new session of our live program. We've completely revamped our live program. It's brand new and improved. It includes a lot more goodies. It's a 3-month program now, and it is called the Dates and Mates Method, and it starts on September 27th. So in this, I go through lessons like this. If you like what we're doing here, you get a lot more of that. We go through the lessons that are about all of these phases of the dating process, and about the myths, and about these I call them dating loops that keep us stuck. And we actually do exercises live in a group and get it into our bodies, get it into action, and then make these promises to ourselves and to the rest of the group, because it's really about building a community. So if you are interested in learning more about the program, we do have a special deal that's going on just this week. You can find out more at damonahoffman.com/program. And I think my assistant Scotty will pop it in the chat, damonahoffman.com/program. So, question time. Now you have your challenge. Now you know about the list myth. Thank you, Scotty. Tell me, what is on your mind? I did ask for questions in advance. So there were a couple of people that submitted questions, but if you have a question, please put it in the chat rather than in the Q&A box. Put it in the chat and I will get through as many questions as I can. It could be a question about anything. It could be a question about online dating. It could be a question about mindset, what we've talked about today. It could be a question about the program. Go ahead and put it in the chat right now, and I will get started with our first question. So this one comes to us from Pamela. She said, I recently started dating and then I had an emergency neurosurgery. We had only gone on 3 dates, and I understand what is meant for you does show up. I disclosed what happened to me the week that I was in the hospital, and you already know, he ghosted me. I'm left wondering what I can do to transform the narrative and allow for people to be in my life. First of all, Pamela, if you're watching live, I just want to say I'm so sorry that happened. And, you know, we all have these peaks and valleys and high points and low points in our lives. And when something bad does happen, for me, the only way that I can look at it with clarity is to say, where's the lesson? Where's the learning? So I'm glad that you're already there and doing that kind of, that and applying that kind of thinking to this situation. However, I think we also have to be careful what we extrapolate out. Thank you for being here, Pamela. We have to be careful what meaning we extrapolate out about globally. Like, what I hear in that situation is that you learned that that person was not going to show up for you. And you know what? Kudos to you for, well, one, making it through a very traumatic experience, I'm sure. And two, kudos to you for finding out that this person was not going to be your person and not going to show up for you when you needed them before you invested more time. You invested 3 days, which is a lot. But imagine if you invested 3 months or 3 years. What I'm not ready to subscribe to this situation is that this means there's no one that will show up for you. That this means that people are not trustworthy. This means this person was not trustworthy, or that the relationship. We all have our limiting beliefs. That's the interesting thing here. So maybe that experience pushed that person up against their limiting belief, right? And then they fell back into their old programming because they're not doing the hard work that you're doing here. So I would say, what can you do to transform the narrative? It's going to start with some of the mantras that we were talking about today. That when we catch ourselves repeating that old mantra, we've got to replace it with the new mantra that is positive, that is affirmative, and that gives us a new path to walk that will lead us to our person. And I could go on and talk about that, but I'll save it for the program. I'll save it for the rest of the days of the challenge. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I got another question here from Maddie. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions here in the chat. Okay, the chat is open. So any questions, again, about anything, feel free to put it below. This question's from Maddie. Maddie asks, what is the best dating app? Oh, my favorite question has reappeared. And go ahead and just put them in the chat rather than in the Q&A box, please. Okay. I love this question because it's a question that has no answer. Finding the right dating app is as individual as finding the right person for you, because each app has a different functionality. Each app has a different set of a pool, and each app is different in each location. So me telling you, Maddie, I don't know if you are in the US or outside of the US, but like, it's not the same dating apps in the UK as it is in Wisconsin. So you've got to kind of try it out, test it out. Certainly ask some friends who are in your area, but I like to focus on two things. First, when you're on the app, do you like the functionality of the app? Like, are you going to be so exhausted and so annoyed by using the app that you're not going to want to use it? And number two, do you like the people who are there? Do you see any people who you're like, oh, I'm curious about this person? Those are the only two questions, and we go into this in much more detail in the Dates and Mates method. And Scotty, I think, put the question there in the chat. But in the Dates and Mates method, we have worksheets where you can really look at the various dating apps and choose the one that's going to be best for you and really fine tune the experience. Because I think people a lot of times expect that the app is just going to be magic. And they go on the app and they're like, I've been on it for 2 weeks and nothing happened. It takes a little time to program the algorithm. It also takes time to figure out if you're on the right app and to get the momentum going. So you really have to look at it experientially. Look at it as an exploratory exercise. Okay, I have a couple more questions here, and then Jewel asks, should I be looking over 50 miles of my area online? Okay, again, Jewel, it's very personal, right? Because it depends on where you are. I'm from Michigan originally, and 50 miles in Michigan is a very different conversation than 50 miles in Los Angeles, where I live right now. If to go 50 miles, like basically you're going from city life in LA to farmland in Central California potentially. But in Michigan, you could just be going from one major city to the other. So you need to decide, first of all, how far are you willing to go for love? Like, are you open to the possibility? It actually makes me think of a client I have, Danette, and I think her story is actually on the Dates and Mates method page at damonahoffman.com/program. But she was a client of mine a few years ago, and she recorded a video talking about this experience of when we started working together. She was like, I'm open. I'm so open. She had that really open mindset, and she was really ready for love. And she was like, I would go up to a 2-hour drive to find love. And we had a whole process for how we would screen through the dates and decide before she showed up who would be right for her. And we'll talk about that more in day 2 of the challenge. But she ended up meeting somebody who, no joke, lived within 5 miles of her house, had gone to the same high school that she did, and was 5 years apart, so they missed each other. She had worked at the same company at one point because they were in different divisions. They never met. And so he was like right there under her nose the whole time. But it was almost like the openness to being willing to go for love, to go further for love, made it possible for her to see what was right there in front of her. So I would say, we'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow, but I would say that generally I try to help people open their pool as much as possible so that they can be the ones doing the screening step. But if you are in the situation where you're like, I have so many messages, I can't even keep track, then you may want to be a little bit more restricted. And depending on the market, 50 miles may be just like, if it's further than you want to go, then it's a non-starter. And again, if you have questions, go ahead and just put them down below in the chat if you can, rather than in the Q&A function, because I got a lot of windows happening here. We're simulcasting on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, as well as Instagram. So Jean says, I've been single for a long time. What's the best way to address this when first meeting or talking to a man? Okay, Jean, that's part of your tape that's playing. That's part of the narrative as, oh, I have to acknowledge that I've been single for a long time, because that might tell a story about myself to that person. Let's just imagine for a moment that's not true. Let's imagine for a moment that story you're telling yourself isn't a problem, and that even if you've been single for a long time, and I actually just talked to somebody who got married for the first time at 50. And actually, my husband's aunt, same thing, had never been married. But she didn't proceed as if that was a problem, that the fact that she hadn't had a relationship for a while was a problem. She moved forward with, this is just authentically who I am. This is how I show up. And of course, if they ask questions about it, then you have an answer ready. And we talk about this in the program as well. You have preparation, you prepare for possible scenarios, but then you show up and you just listen, and you just show up as your authentic self. So I would love to get into more of that tomorrow, but I want to wrap up here on the Q&A. Last question from Vanessa. My date asked to kiss me on our first date, and I said yes. There were fireworks. Now I'm dreaming about what it would be like to be more physical. At what point do I discuss it with him? Oh, Vanessa, I'm so excited that you're getting all the feels, because that is what really excites me about, I love the first phase of dating. It's so magical, and that's why it's so important to lay the groundwork carefully. I will just say this, because we're going to talk more about the date on day 3 of the challenge. I will say slow love. My Dates and Mates listeners are like, yes. Give me some hearts if you know what I'm talking about. Slow love, slow love, slow love, slow love is the answer to all those things. Now, does that mean you can't, thank you for the hearts. Does that mean that you can't kiss somebody that you find attractive? No. It just means that you have the clarity we talked about earlier, and you try to pace yourself. I see you're already getting really excited. And what happens when we start to get excited is we tend to push. We tend to push for the outcome that we want. And we put blinders on, and we can't see like all the red flags or any of the like things that are deeper conversations. We can't see them because we just see the attraction, and we're like just so into it. So that's why I keep saying you gotta slow love it. You gotta ease into it. And I think you will know. I wouldn't push the conversation. I would say I think you will know when you are comfortable moving to that phase, and when you have clarity, if you work through the steps as I will be talking about in this challenge all week, of making sure you're not falling into a myth, like, are you attracted because they fit the list myth, or are you attracted more because of the pillar, because you have the shared goals for the future? And then I'll cover the other myths and the other pillars later in the week. But I'm excited for you, and I'm proceeding with caution, as I hope you will too. Okay, so many questions, so much to cover. We'll be here all week doing this challenge. They might not all be this long, but I just really wanted, the mindset is so important. So I wanted to make sure we set the foundation really clearly for you, and how to address that list myth before we start building into the other myths. So I will be back again here with more advice, more challenges at 12 noon Pacific every day this week. And if you're not signed up yet for if you just kind of popped in on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or am I supposed to say X? On X or Facebook or YouTube, if you just popped in here and you're like, I didn't even know what was going on. Suddenly I was in a class. Suddenly she's giving me challenges. She's giving me homework to do. If you didn't sign up officially, there actually is a page where you can give me your email. I will give you a daily digest along with a worksheet. Because I know a lot of times we hear, oh, I got all these great tips from Damona, but remember the action piece? If we don't write it down, we don't make that commitment to it, it doesn't change. And then next thing you know, we've forgotten it. So I want to give you the worksheet so you can keep moving on this journey with us. So that's damonahoffman.com/challenge. If you already signed up online, you will just automatically get the worksheet. I think you might have already gotten the worksheet prior to this one, but all the recordings are also there. So if you missed anything, you came in late, or you aren't able to join any of the recordings for the rest of the week, don't worry, I got you. Just sign up at damonahoffman.com/challenge. Scotty there put it in the chat. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you want to continue this journey, enrollment is now open. I only do a live program twice a year, and the book is coming out in January, so I'm not 100% sure we're going to be able to do the live coaching program this January. So if you've been thinking about it, or if you just heard about it today and you're like, I want to do more of this, I want to go deeper, I want to be a part of the community, check it out, damonahoffman.com/program. And we're enrolling now. The program starts January. Dude, I just said January. The program starts September 27th. It starts in a little more than 2 weeks. And I will give you the roadmap. So you don't have to like wonder, am I doing this right? How do I do this? Just check it out, damonahoffman.com/program. And for this week only, I'm giving everybody $200 off for showing up here, for doing the work here, and for wanting to continue. So check that out. Scotty put that link in there, damonahoffman.com/program. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be back here again at 12 noon Pacific for Challenge 2. Can't wait to have you there. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.